проституция же, просто шлюхи. Нет? Простите за острый. Талантливая просто. А, это все вокруг этого все крутится, что ли? Ты не шутишь, что ли? Идиоты, блин. Ну хоть есть чем для заняться. Будет тем. Не понимаю, лихо говорится. Нет, не касается, мне вообще плевать. Просто. Как бы, ну чё ты на это вот смотришь, и чё так вот, да, понимаешь? И как вот это называется-то? Вот как вот это назвать-то? Ты не понимаешь, что ли? Ну да, нет, они для так естественно, это коммерция просто. Я имею в виду, что они они еще говорят там, нет, не это самое. Типа, у тебя какие ассоциации вызывают, как бы, да, вот это вот все. Дочки твои, там, внучки и прочее, да, это все. Вот это вот, как у тебя. Я понимаю, талантливый, короче, талант. Я очень говорю, просто, еби, это как бы все нормально, короче. Понятно. Ну в том-то и шутка такая, да. Просто, понимаешь, они все должны быть беременные, понимаешь? Да, как бы. Все это очень, да. И сразу все на место станется, да, понимаешь. Кто-то просто будет беременный, кого-то и возьмут к себе, да, навсегда. Ну или надолго очень, не может вообще навсегда. Ну как бы ладно, меня это не касается. Ну тогда не надо, значит, жить для себя тогда. Ну не удивляйся тогда. Знаешь, как бы, ну да. Я не. Как вот ты относишься к этому? Ну, нормально, как бы, ну, популяция такая. Видишь, одно другое. Все как бы типа сбалансировано. Балансировано, ну и чё дальше? Ну, тебе нравится, нормально, ну и ладно. Если, да, я на себе так говорю, да. Ну, в смысле, ты не обязан это все делать, понимаешь? И даже терпеть, и даже молчать об этом ты не обязан, если ты мужик. Понимаешь? Да. Ну да. Ну зато, ну платить-то надо, да. Платить надо, ну что ты делаешь? Дело-то что? В сторону улучшения, видишь, это все очень трудно. Они должны быть беременные просто и малоподвижные какие-то, понимаешь? Вот как-то все и точка, если ты так думаешь, что тебе делать, а все больше ничего не надо делать. Это плохо очень, да? Самостоятельная политика. Ну, смотри сам, как уже головы спрашиваю детей. Я кушать опять захотел. А чё, вот смотри, а как лучше жизнь прожить, я не знаю. Честно, да. Потому что все равно маленький, мозга у вас нету. Если я, например, ревнивый муж попал, или как бы тебе сказать-то, или еще что-нибудь в этом надо понимать, да, например. Ну да. Неизвестно. Ладно, я все. Так. Че тут? Ну-ка, че? Че тут хотел-то? А, ну да. Лаймхаус. Че? А, видишь, все нормально сразу, да? Ну, получается, вроде как, да, что это самое. Ну и живи так тогда, никто не говорит, ну, да, понимаешь. Электронки. Hey, thank you, gracias, amigos. Pum pum, pum pum. Бонжур, бонжур, бонжур.
Любите рисовать? Записывайтесь на бесплатный курс «Рисуют все». 40 практических и теоретических уроков по 5 направлениям. Курс не привязан ко времени, и проходить его можно в удобном для себя темпе.
Against simplicity, for complexity. Against the collective, for the individual. Against politics, for metaphysics. Against mechanism, for the dream. Salvador Dali was 38 when he published his autobiography. In it, alongside graphic descriptions of his early life and adolescence, he gives us a list of what he calls his battles for one thing against another. And in one particular line, he writes, for architecture against music. This seems strange. So many artists in the 20th century, Kandinsky, Matisse, Picasso, saw music as an equivalent, if not a higher art form than painting. But Dali seemed to actively dislike music. In another section of the book, Dali describes the construction of a scene in his and Buñuel's 1929 surrealist masterpiece, Un Chien Andalou. The shooting of the scene of the rotten donkeys and the pianos was a rather fine sight, I must say. I made up the putrefaction of the donkeys with great pots of sticky glue, which I poured over them. Also, I emptied their eye sockets and made them larger by hacking them out with scissors. In the same way, I furiously cut their mouths open to make the white rows of their teeth show to better advantage, above those other rows of teeth formed by the keys of the black pianos. Dali sees the pianos here as just objects. There's nothing lyrical, romantic, or artistic about them. They're as dead as the rotting donkeys that lay on top. So where did this come from? Why did he approach music in this way? And what can we learn from the musical imagery in his paintings? Dali's use of musical instrument in his work was prolific, particularly in the 1930s. We find paintings full of pianos, violins and cellos, which are sometimes combined to form ensembles, and in one painting we even see a solitary tuba. And it's through Dali's use of string instruments that we can gain our first insight into how he thought about music. Let's start with this painting, Masochistic Instrument from 1934. The violin is the focal point of this work, framed not only by the cracks in the wall that surround it, but also by the light and shadows that draw our eye towards the instrument. The violin is the protagonist in this story, and the faceless nude above the antagonist, who is pinching the violin as if pinching skin. The solid instrument has become fluid, placid, soft. Like so many things in Dali's paintings, a direct line can be drawn from the object to its meaning. The cypress tree on the right represents death. The cracks in the wall remind us of decay and the destructive effect of time. And the soft violin symbolizes sexual impotence. For a long time, I experienced the misery of believing I was impotent, as Dali wrote in Unspeakable Confessions. This painting acts as a gateway to the other depictions of string instruments in his work, and in almost every one of them, Dali turns the solid structure of the instrument into a waxy, flaccid, living thing. In Dali's paintings, hard things become soft, inanimate objects become animate. Just look at his most recognizable work, The Persistence of Memory. These melting clocks are part of a huge collection of soft-hard dichotomies in his paintings. Hard edges cutting through the soft flesh of one's rigid bodies. We see a similar approach taken in the 1940 painting, Daddy Longlegs of the Evening, Hope. On the left of the canvas, a cannon spews out a soft aeroplane, which mutates into a version of the famous Hellenistic sculpture, Winged Victory of Samothrace. In front of it, a soft head transforms into a woman's body, playing a weeping cello in white mastic. And gnawing at the edges of the head, we find Dali's ants, a sign of decay. This painting was the first to be completed after Dali and his wife, Gala, moved to America to escape the war. Europe at this time was collapsing, falling under the thumb of the Nazi regime, and everything, people, communities, political movements, and culture were all powerless to stop it. So, the hope in this painting is not in music, or art, or industry, or war, but from the spider seen in the sunset. According to an old French legend, a spider seen in the evening is a sign of good luck. The use of string instruments in these works represent the two extremes of Dali's approach to music. One looks outwards, with the instrument representing something larger than itself, in this case culture, and the other looks inwards, representing the self and the body. But they do share a common thread. In one, culture is impotent to stop an oppressive regime, and in the other, the artist himself is impotent, unable to realize his sexual and artistic potential. But what about Dali's depictions of the other musical instrument found in a number of his works, the piano? This is where it gets more personal and more varied. Pianos appear in many different forms in Dali's paintings. There are the more traditional versions, like those in The Red Orchestra or Sentimental Colloquy, but then we get the more abstract depictions, or versions where the piano has been distilled into its essential components. Just the lid, or just the keys, or just a shadow. All these depictions are rooted in Dali's formative musical experiences. As a child, he learned the piano, but he was also forced to sit through open-air, impromptu concerts given by the friends of the Dali family, the Pichots, who would often use the Dali family piano for their performances, rolling it out onto the rocks of Port Ligat or Quebec. This is the same piano that Salvador's father would often use to display a book on sexually transmitted diseases. Turn to pages showing the most graphic images. You can, I think, begin to understand where Dali's anxiety-ridden depictions of music came from. In his 1933 painting, Necrophilic Fountain Flowing from a Grand Piano, we not only see a realization of the Pichot's concerts on this distinctive Spanish terrain, but the piano, an instrument normally associated with beauty, is transformed here into an evocation on death. The rectangular piano becomes a stone tomb, with a cypress tree, again a signal of death, growing out of it. To the left, a bat flies in the empty, dead space of the canvas, and the instrument leaks life into the piano-shaped pool. In 1934, Dali then painted two very similar paintings that featured the piano. They're both set in the same rocky environment as the 1933 painting, but these works rely much more heavily on Dali's hard-soft theories. The piano becomes a malleable, distortable object, and in both paintings he sets up a visual rhyme between the teeth of the skulls and the black and white keys of the piano, the same trope that he featured in Un Chien Andalou 8 years earlier. These are paintings not of death, but of anxiety and fear. The lyrical components of the works, the bird in one and the fisherman and his boat in the other, contrast aggressively with the violent nature of the scenes. Even the light in Atmospheric Skull sodomizing a grand piano, with its warm Mediterranean glow, has been manipulated to accent the violent nature of the painting, with sharp-edged shadows framing the action. This sense of unease is so often found in Dali's works that feature the piano, to the extent that he doesn't even need to show the piano to recreate this feeling. In the 1930 painting, The Average Bureaucrat, the eyeless, earless figure looks beyond the right edge of the canvas towards a monolithic object that casts an ominous shadow. The shadow of a grand piano. Dali's childhood memories of concerts and music have been turned into nightmares. It would be easy to stop the story of Dali and music here. In the 1930s, he produced a number of paintings that featured musical imagery, and through these, as well as through his autobiography, he gives us an unambiguous statement of how he thought about music. And although he would go on to work with musicians and would even co-write a ballet inspired by Wagner's Tristan und Isolde, he gives us an all-too-real reminder of his thoughts on music in these two paintings from 1983, produced during a time when he was suffering with depression and Parkinson's-like symptoms. But something happened right at the end of his artistic career. In 1983, he painted this, his last work, The Swallow's Tale. This is a realization of a mathematical function from René Thom's catastrophe theory, but in it, he also gives us 4 red and black sound holes from a cello, as well as a half-complete impression of a cello in the top left-hand corner. In his last artistic creation, in a painting celebrating the beauty of mathematics, he also celebrates the...
В любой ситуации в течение дня есть свой святой источник. Купи 3 бутылки святой источник, загрузи чек и выигрывай призы каждый день.
The beauty of music. Music might have been a source of anxiety and nightmares for Salvador Dali when he was young. Celebrating the beauty of mathematics, he also celebrates the beauty of music. Music might have been a source of anxiety and nightmares for Salvador Dali when he was young, but it seems to have been a source of inspiration and maybe even comfort for him in his final years. Dali died of heart failure at the end of January 1989, and during his final moments, he listened to his favourite recording of Tristan und Isolde. Maybe there's even more to this story than we'll ever know. Thank you so much for watching. I had so much fun diving into the crazy world of Salvador Dali here, and was amazed at the number of paintings that featured music in some way. If you enjoyed this one, then do take a look at my 4 other videos on art and music, looking at Kandinsky, Van Gogh, Matisse and Rothko. I've linked the playlist in the description below. Also, do subscribe to my channel if you want to keep up to date with all my new videos, and sign up to my Patreon for behind the scenes content and early access to all my video essays. See you next time.
With just 8 months left, back to our city and our scene and the listeners in the back of the room. But mostly we want to connect to that spark that lives deep within all of us. That spark that wants to be fire. We practice every day to clear the path for that spark. Let's practice together. Welcome to the Daily Guided Practice Session. Let's start with our chromatic scale, 88 beats per minute. Let's get to work.
Плохая память, новое забываете, новая информация запоминается с трудом, а вспомнить еще тяжелее.
What's up, everybody? I was just getting in the flow of our intro there. It always gets me a little bit amped up. Welcome to today's Daily Guided Practice Session on YouTube. My name is Anna Manis. We're just going to get
we'll be working with Miles Davis, classic tune, Blue and Green. Really fine title, but Hiromi, Kaleidoscope. We'll check it out. Damien from Ireland and from Germany. Bobby Enriquez. Okay. Never heard Bobby Enriquez. We'll check it out. Magnus from Stockholm is listening to the Yellow Jacket. What's up, Ian's going to put in the chat there a link. It slashes $30 off the price of that very popular course, Jazz. Sounding, solid sounding, voicings, and even a little bit of inner voice movement once we get going here. So, if we just look here at the melody and the rhythm of this very beautiful tune, it gives us a lot of great information. A nice slow tempo. I'm going to go there, so y'all know. Interesting turnaround there. And we're back at the top. All right. So with just this melody and groove, we get a sense of the most important parts of the tune, right? We have the melody, and then we have where the bass movement is going. So this is what I want you to use to build up how you think about voicing chords, is what's on top and what's on bottom. It's kind of the first step of how we decide what we're going to do. I want you to play this with me. Let's play through this. Well, I'm going to pick up
Who's that?
just a little bit.
What is it?
2, 3, and play with me. Play with me.
So funny.
I'll try to as well this time.
No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Wow. Ладно, это бит. Бит.
It's all we need, really, to establish what this tune is. Anything in between these notes is kind of up to us. I mean, it's not ultimately like we need to stay true to the form, but everything in between those two things can really be messed with and is up to us for interpretation of how we want to color it, how we want to structure it. So that's the most basic level, just the melody and the root. Now what if we want to add some more of the important bits of each chord? What are the important bits of each one of these chords? Well, the two notes that really establish what a chord is are the 3rd and the 7th, or the 7th and the 3rd. It doesn't really matter what order we do. It just matters that we have some pretty good voice singing. So, what if we then, to our melody and root here, we add the shell, the 3rd and the 7th, right? And I'm going to just put a thing here. It doesn't matter which hand grabs what. So we want to make sure that we're comfortable, right, with our hand shape and the options that we have available, so that we can grab things with.
So, да, здорово. Да, вообще да. Literature. Cool. Alright. Ну, что не надо.